أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يأتكم مثل الذين خلوا من قبلكم مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا حتى يقول الرسول والذين آمنوا معه متى نصر الله ألا إن نصر الله قريب صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. I bear witness that without Allah there is no God. I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is the last, the final messenger of Allah, after whom no prophet, old or new, will come. And I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. The verse for today's khutbah is taken from chapter 2, verse 214, which I translate as follows. Is it that you have come to the conclusion that you enter Jannah or paradise without a situation coming upon you similar to those who passed away before you? Challenges and damages, injury afflicted them, and they trembled, such that the messenger and the peaceful ones in a similar situation were waiting for when the help of Allah arrives. No, really, the help of Allah is close by. The Prophet Muhammad in the history of the world is the most peaceful human being that ever existed. Not only did he find peace within himself, he also generated that peace among his followers. As the Quran mentions here, Allazina amanu, those who found peace. We know in the Quran there are two words used for peace. One is Muslim and one is Mu'min. Muslim means submission to the will of God. Let's search for peace. The Quran itself says, don't say you are believers, but say you are Muslim, because faith has not entered into your hearts. In other words, Islam is a pursuit of peace. Iman is the result of that pursuit. That having achieved and attained peace, you now become a peaceful individual, a mu'min. So one is the attitude of searching and seeking peace, and the other one is the result, that it has an impact upon you. It has an impact upon the individual. And the Prophet Muhammad, in a desert land, a land in which the soil was so sandy that they could dig it with your hands and bury girl children alive. He witnessed all of these things. He witnessed all the afflictions, as the Quran mentions here. They were faced with afflictions and challenges. We had Bilal having a hot bowl put upon him, and there were many other atrocities which I wouldn't want to mention here. They are so atrocious, so horrible. But much of them we know. And the Quran describes the attitude of the Prophet Muhammad and the peaceful ones among him. What was that attitude? It was expectation, awaiting of the help of Allah. anytime we are faced with any challenge or any injuries, and the difference used here in the Quran between ba'sa and darra means challenges means the obstacles that we are faced with. Ba'sa, the obstacles we are faced with, physical, mental, moral, spiritual. And darra means the effect of those challenges. Sometimes it injures us, it damages us, it hurts us. It affects us in some way, puts us in a state of depression. Whether those challenges were of our health, of our wealth, of our family, of our community and society, we find that it affects us in some way. And we begin to tremble, the Quran says here. Zalzalu, they tremble like an earthquake. Zilzal in Arabic is an earthquake, and zalzalu means you trembling, shaking. And what were they waiting for? They were waiting for the help of Allah. The response of the Quran is this simply: the help of Allah is close by. What does that mean? Does it mean that all the troubles will be over in a short while? We have to understand the message of the Quran is for the development of the personality and character of each and every human being. If we avail ourselves of the teachings, if we utilize the teachings of the Quran. So the Quran is telling us here that the help of Allah is not something external. It's not something that's going to drop from the sky. It's not something that will come in the form of wealth and money and all of these things. The founder of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, says we are a small organization. If we were a wealthy organization with a lot of power, a lot of resources, how will people know that we are actually doing the work of Allah? It is when we have so little and we can face the challenges and the injuries because we have a power outside of us and inside of us which helps us and protects us and grants us success, and that is the power of Allah. In any situation we face in life, individually, family-wise, as a Jamaat, as a community, as a nation, as a society. So the help of Allah is not external, or not always external. The help of Allah is really how we react to these challenges. There's an example that someone gave to illustrate how we deal with challenges. It says if you take 3 pots of water, put them to boil, and then in one pot you put a potato, the other pot you put an egg, and the other pot you put some coffee. And you wait a while, and then you take it off the fire and you inspect each pot and its contents. You will notice that the potato, which went in very hard, came out quite soft. You will notice that the egg, which we know is soft inside, came out hard. The strangest one was the coffee. There was no change in the coffee, but the water changed. It became a drink, it became coffee. Now, we have to understand that that story really represents our situation and attitude in the face of challenges. Which one will we be? Which one you think you are when challenges come? Are you tough and hard, as many of us think we are, very tough and hard, but when challenges come, we become very weak and helpless. We become very soft. Or we can have a hard shell protecting us, but inside we are soft. Put us in challenges and we become very strong, hard, sometimes unrelenting, so that an egg is fragile. Potato is hard, becomes out soft. The egg is fragile, just protected by a shell. But its interior is very soft, and when put into the boiling water, it becomes tough and hard. In the case of the coffee beans that was ground and put there, they were also exposed to boiling water, but they changed the water and created something new. If you apply that to the Prophet and his companions, there were some people who were very hard and relentless, and when challenges came upon them, they became very weak. In fact, there's a statement of the Prophet Muhammad that one of his particular followers, he says, that man will go to hell. And the companions began to observe him. They wanted to know why did the Prophet say this. They looked at him and they saw him saying all of his prayers, fasting, giving charity, doing everything that religion requires. But when it came to battle and he got a slight injury, he couldn't take it, and so he committed suicide. The incident merely indicates that circumstances sometimes determine how we function and how we react. So the question we all have to ask ourselves at some point in time, when we are young, as we grow older, if we are faced with examinations, if we are faced with health issues, if we are faced with financial problems, whatever the issues are, we always have to ask ourselves, which one am I? When adversity, when challenges, when injury and damages knock on our door, how do we respond? Am I a potato that I feel like I'm tough and I could face every situation, nobody could challenge me? And then when the real challenges come, we become weak and soft. Or are we an egg? Soft inside, a very lenient person, but when challenges come, I have to function differently. I have to be a bit harsh and hard. Or I can be like the coffee, in which I don't change, but I can change the environment around me. The coffee makes the water into a drink. So that if and when things happen around us, the only thing that truly matters is how you choose to react to it and what you make out of it. How do you choose to react to it? I recall many years ago when we had the good fortune to be guided by that well-known missionary of the Ahmadiyya Anjuman, Maulana S.M. Tufail. He came to Trinidad. He would often tell stories, incidents, in order to illustrate his points on the views and teachings of the Quran and how to behave and function in life. And I never forgot a story that he gave. He said there was this person who used to buy newspapers every day from a vendor. But there was some problem, and the newspaper vendor used to abuse this individual every time he went to purchase a newspaper. One day the person carried a friend with him, and as he approached the newspaper vendor and bought his newspaper, before he did that, he greeted the person, "Good morning, hello, howdy, good day, how are you?" And the person abused him. Another occasion, second day, third day, same thing would happen. So eventually a friend asked him, and he said, "Look, this man is abusing you every day, and yet still you come to him and you greet him so nicely, so kindly, asking about his welfare. How is that so?" And Maulana Tufail used to tell us, he said, "You know," the man replied, and he said, "I would not let his behavior determine how I should function. That is, because he's abusive to me, I must respond and react in a like manner." So the Quran tells us that the help of Allah is our ability to control ourselves within. That is what is meant by the help of Allah is near. It means that the potential, the resources that we need to face any challenge in life, any damages that we have is within us. The help of Allah is within us. The Quran says, when my servants ask you about me, I am near. I will answer your prayer, but I am near, I'm not far away. I don't have to come down from heaven in order to help you. And so, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the founder of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam, urges us with these words of the Quran that says, وَالْقَازِمِينَ الْغَيْزَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. This is a beautiful verse of the Quran taken from chapter 3 that says that we must be people who restrain our anger and erase offensive behavior from affecting ourselves. And he has required this in the bayat and the pledge we take, what we call a code of conduct. And that's why we are urging everyone, young and old, Muslim, even Hindus, Christians, everyone, let us abide in the world by a code of conduct. And that is laid down in the bayat. In our membership card of the Ahmadiyya and Jumu'ah, we have given these 10 conditions. And one of them is to pledge that we will do nothing to injure other human beings. By word, by mouth, by action. We find this dissimulation, or what we find hypocrisy in the world today. You know, the Prophet Muhammad was always accused of a man who spread Islam by the sword. But I said he's the most peaceful person that ever lived on the face of this earth. He spent more time trying to avoid war than to promote war. The same people who made these statements and their descendants, the same countries, the attitude of people, the opponents of Islam who want to promote Islam as a religion of terrorism, what is their behavior? What is their behavior? Their biggest expenditure of their budget is in missiles, is in what they call defense. When we say Muhammad defended Islam, they said, no, he spread Islam with the sword. But isn't democracy and communism and all these ideas being promoted with the bullet? And we find in so many countries of the world, there's more call for arms and ammunition. Not for peace. We don't want peace. We want arms and ammunition. Billions. Not millions, not thousands, but billions are being spent in producing more and more missiles to kill people where there are people who are starving all over the world. So this kind of duplicity, this kind of hypocrisy that we see in the world today is very troubling indeed. And that's why the Quran predicts this and says that we must be a people who are able to analyze what is there in the situation in the world today. And one of the predictions of the Quran is that there's going to come a time in which you will find a world that is influenced by two kinds of attitudes. And those attitudes are called Yajuj and Majuj, translated in English as Gog and Magog. For some reason, people try to interpret that to mean different nations in the world. That may be so. But the root word of Aj, from which we get Majuj and Yajuj, means fire. And Yajuj means one who instigates people's passions. As we say, chuk fire. And Majuj are those who respond, they become agitated. And this is what we see in the world today. Some years ago, we had a picture of the Prophet Muhammad that was published by people in Denmark. They instigated it. Recently, again, we had a man in Florida who was going to burn the Quran. There was another individual a couple of years ago who went and said it is his right of freedom of speech to burn the Quran again somewhere in Europe. And that agitated the Muslims. So people deliberately do these things to offend the Muslim community. And then the Muslim community, in response, become agitated, and they will burn, as they did in Sialkot, a Buddhist, I think it was, or Hindu, going to work in his factory and beat him up and burnt his body in the road, and the police did nothing. And there have been members of the Ahmadiyya movement who are shot on a daily basis. They have doctors, they have pharmacies, they are helping people. Imagine recently a court case was lodged against our Anjuman, Central Anjuman in Pakistan, merely because on the gate, the entrance to the compound, it's a gated community, there are the words Dar Salam. And they say we are blaspheming, we are offending the Muslim community because Dar Salam is a verse of the Quran, words found in the Quran. So in order to avoid any kind of enmity or hatred or inciting any violence, Anjuman members went and covered it with some paper, and the case went to the court. The appeal court stopped the action right now. It still hasn't been decided, but at least nobody could take action because they have stopped the case from going further. But there are countries in the world in which you have the capital is Dar es Salaam, and there are Christians there. In some cases, Christians are the government. In some countries where you have majority Muslims or a large section of the Muslim community. But people find all kinds of things all over the world because of this attitude of being unable to, as Mirza Ghulam Ahmad pointed out, Qazimin al-Ghaiz, controlling their hostility. For Islam is a religion of peace, not hostility. And this is the message of the Ahmadiyya movement, and that is why Mirza Ghulam Ahmad emphasized so much that our jihad is not the jihad of the sword, not the jihad of physical violence, the jihad of the pen. Yes, we can write, we can communicate with each other, but we must always promote that which is true. We know we are faced in a world that has been prophesied by the Prophet Muhammad to be what is called influenced by Dajjal, the arch deceiver. Today, that is recognized as part of the world and one of the biggest threats to human civilization, the Dajjal, they call it fake news. You're finding that the use of artificial intelligence now, prominent people are being shown with very dirty photographs that have been altered. They didn't take those photographs, but people altered it, and recently even it was acknowledged by one of the princesses in UK. She herself altered her photograph. It's becoming so common now, we don't know what is truth from what is falsehood. And in chapter 2, verse 213, the verse that precedes this verse of the Quran that I've recited, it says, all human beings are one community. Allah sends prophets to them in order that they may have a scripture by means of which they can decide right from wrong, make judgments, be guided. They must distinguish right from wrong. قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. Allah has made it so that truth is clearly distinct from error. But the Quran goes on to say that is one thing. The other thing is, what is your reaction? Is it that you have come to the conclusion that you will live in a peaceful society in paradise? For this is what the Prophet Muhammad fought for, not the paradise only of the next world. He had gone there long afterwards in his Miraj. But the moment he got the revelation of the Quran, he wanted peace among his people. And they had to go through tremendous challenges and tremendous damages and injuries and hurt in order to enjoy the paradise of this world. Yes, the paradise of the next world will come after Allah judged us. But the paradise of this world requires our own judgment, our own ability to distinguish between truth and falsehood, and function in a way in which the Quran says here that we recognize the help of Allah. And the help of Allah is such that we have to analyze ourselves. Am I thinking that I am very strong in my faith, in my religion, but when I'm faced with challenges, I abandon it? Or am I one who is very soft, I don't think I could really manage, But then when challenges come, those are the ones you see stand up and become very hard. Or shall I be that one? My focus is not so much on myself. I will not change. I know what my faith is. I know what I believe in and how I can function. But the object of my life is to make coffee. Is to make the world become part of me. Whatever flavor I have in me, whatever taste I have in me, I will change the water and let it be a drink that is refreshing for all of the world, whether it's tea, coffee, or whatever it is. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quran al-Azim wa nafa'ana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim innahu ta'ala jawadul kareem malikul barrul rahim. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina may yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlil fala hadiya lahu wa nashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa nashhadu anna Muhammadan 'abduhu wa rasuluhu. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma ansur man nasara deen Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa jalla minhum. Allahumma aghzul man qazala deen Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa la tajalla minhum. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i zil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi. يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أعلى أكبر.